live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart and co-host, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir. How are you?
I am doing great, but I'm not doing as good as you because it is your birthday today. And as I said on Twitter, would appreciate everyone who's hopping in to wish you a happy birthday. Anything fun planned for tonight?
Yes, I am. Obviously, when we get off of here, as we are live, we're not recorded, as Elks likes to tell us sometimes. I'm gonna grill some steaks. I'm a cheesecake fan, so we're doing cheesecake and fruit.
Okay.
So I can get some good carbs while I get some bad carbs here. And this weekend, my wife and I are going to take a little trip with the both of us. And so
where are you going?
The local casino here, the L'Auberge Casino. So we're going to go there and kind of hang out and spend some time together. And they got a sports book in there. And here's the truth. I might put a couple nickels on a couple of these SEC quarterbacks to win the Heisman in this upcoming season.
Maybe you should.
If you had to put all of your money in on one quarterback in the SEC winning the Heisman, who do you pick?
I probably
say Garrett to appease me or anything.
No. Oh God, no! I'm not putting my money on Garrett. That's my. I think I'd put it on two guys. I would do
Arch Manning and who?
DJ Lagway and Arch Manning. I like the thought of Lenore Sellers, but my problem is I just don't know if the supporting cast is enough for him to like statistically he'd have to be in striking distance of like a Jaden Daniels type season. And do we think that he's going to do that? Do you think he's going to be great this year? No, I don't think he's going to be in that Daniels type.
The thing with Jaden that I think people forget is he scored 50 touchdowns.
Right. Like it takes a lot to not be in like the national championship convo. You have to do something crazy like Travis Hunter or like Jaden Daniels. I think like if Florida's as good as they could be this year, Lagway absolutely will be. And if Texas is as good as they are this year, Arch absolutely would be. So those are probably the two that I would go with. Is my internet messed up, by the way? I'm getting like a message.
Yeah, it's kind of coming in and out. We can hear you fine. It's just I'm
getting killed today with technical problems. It's a wonderful day.
Yeah, we've had a very interesting week with technical problems. I mean, we'll
say the least. To say the
very least. I think, we had a very interesting go into the birthday. By the way, I got a bone to pick with you before we get rolling here.
Why? What did I do?
The bone I got to pick with you is that, today I woke up because I was all excited because it's your boy's birthday, whatever. And I started a road to glory with a running back. And I got to tell you, I think you just suck. Because
no. Screw you. Don't do this to me. Don't gaslight me. Go ahead. Why? Explain yourself. Explain. I need to hear this.
I am running back 1 in week 2.
Okay. My problem was in the high school recruiting, when you do it, some of the challenges are so ultra specific that they're hard to accomplish. That was my problem with it. That was my issue.
I rushed for 20 touchdowns in 3 weeks.
You're talking about what difficulty are you playing on? What difficulty are you?
Varsity.
Okay, that's why. Why.
I'm there to have fun. I'm not there to pity patter around.
See, you're just like Sean when we talk about video games. Me and him have these discussions all the time where I tell him I like to challenge myself, and then he tells me that he would just rather enjoy playing the game. I'd rather be pissed off. Because I'm trying.
Why would you make yourself miserable?
I don't know. I do that with everything in my life. Blake,
by the way, I will give you this. The challenges in running back to become a starter are freaking hard as a running back. They're really freaking hard, even on varsity.
Yeah,
and I'm
that's
like,
a good point.
Shit. Like,
what
this
team
is
did you go to? You went to LSU. Live a little, Blake. Live a little. Live in a different reality.
Here's the thing. I get there to the hat selection day, and I just can't do it. Mentally, I can't get over it.
Who did you pick between?
Ohio State, Alabama, and LSU.
I would have gone to Ohio State. I would have gone to Ohio State in that situation.
Here's the thing. They didn't have like the running, like I would have been RB1 week 1.
If you had gone to Ohio State.
Yeah.
You really made a mistake. Yeah, because with the running back depth at Ohio State is.
I mean, not really though, because it's week 2 and I'm already RB1.
Unbelievable. I can't. You better transfer. You better not stay at LSU. You better have a little fun with it.
I can't do it. I will. I make a promise to you right now.
Okay.
I will make a quarterback or something, and I will go to a. Here's what I want to do. I want to go to a lower school and just go stupid, and then go in the portal and see what happens.
That's what I did, but on a higher difficulty than you did. The only problem, and I went to Memphis. The only problem when you do that is that your teammates suck. Like they're really bad. So you have no blocking, and everybody drops everything.
Did you see this guy who went to, I say a lower school, like Texas Tech is a lower school. Did you see, I forget the guy's name, but he does this for a living. He does the EA Sports thing for a living. Did you see that he went to Texas Tech and, dude, they're going – he plays on Heisman, by the way. Dude is going off. He has 75 touchdowns, and he's going into a national championship game tonight at like 9 p.m. Central. I'm like, this shit is crazy, dude.
That is wild.
Texas Tech apparently has got receivers galore over there.
Oh, I bet.
Well, when you spend $55 million, I mean, maybe that –
right.
Maybe that's what happens. But nevertheless, we're not here to talk about EA Sports. I just had to pick a bone with Joe here. I do want to do a corner. I think that would be fun.
I don't have the patience for that. I don't know. I've heard that it is impossible to do corner because if you mess up once, your teammate grade tanks. Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard.
We'll put it on freshmen. Let's go have some fun, baby.
Come on, man.
But SEC Media Days continue here, Joe. And before we get started, I just want to tell everybody, since it's my birthday, I want all of them to do us a favor. Hit the like and share.
Yes.
Share to all those groups if you're on Facebook and all those social media pages. You're watching us, listening to us on YouTube. Like, subscribe, notification bell wherever you listen to podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe. And you and I are also gearing up for August the 1st, where you and I will make a big announcement on the show.
Yes.
We're very, very excited for the future of Ruffino and Joe show. It's going to be really good. But tonight, we got to start off with some more SEC Media Day stuff. Kalen DeBoer and the Alabama Crimson Tide took over the day-to-day, mainly because of the fact that Kalen DeBoer ran out there and talked about his quarterback situation and talked about the expectations for himself at the University of Alabama. Joe, because both of them are the hottest of topics today at the SEC Media Days, not Greg Sankey saying that he made Steve Sarkisian walk out to the A&M fight song. But regardless of that, wherever you want to start off here, Kalen DeBoer talking about expectations. And if the season started today, which, Joe, we only have 45 days until it starts, Ty Simpson would be his starting quarterback. What do you think about some of the comments that Kalen DeBoer here has mentioned?
Yeah, let's start with the expectations conversation because he didn't say anything that we weren't expecting when he talked about this. This was the quote that he said, if you internally ask us, no, in reference to if they felt they met expectations. We fell short of making the playoffs. It's as simple as that, right? And I felt like we didn't talk a lot at the end of the season about coaches of like, did they meet what we hoped or wanted or needed them to do to feel strong about going into their second season for a lot of these first-year coaches. Right. And if you just look at the record and what they did, not looking at who they lost to, they weren't short of expectations in my eyes. Having 9 wins after all the guys that left, all the depth that left, that to me was a quality regular season. But where I think that we can talk about Alabama and DeBoer not meeting those expectations was who they lost to. And who they lost to were a bad Oklahoma team that was up and down the entire year, and Vanderbilt that was unexpectedly a tough battle for every opponent. And I feel like what DeBoer needs to take from last year into this year, Blake, is that they need to be consistent every single week. I give you credit as something that you brought up when he left Washington and went to Alabama, is that it's not like the Pac-12 where you can face off with a weak opponent after you get a big win and get a little bit of a reset. Yes. They treated that as such, and that is why they lost those 2 games that they should not have lost. Every opponent on your schedule in the SEC sees Alabama and sees an opportunity to make themselves relevant, to make themselves a lot bigger and make themselves seem much more successful than maybe they actually are. You are going to get
Vandy.
AKA Vandy. You are going to get the best performance from your opponent because you're Alabama. So, Blake, that was like the biggest thing for me as I was reflecting on this, thinking about, did he meet expectations?
Well, to your point, when on that very quickly, there are two things can be true at once. Let's start off with the real truth. Mm-hmm. The real truth that nobody wants to say out loud, because it is Bama, is a coach going 9-3 in year one is not bad.
No,
I don't care. I don't care where you are. You can be at the University of Alabama. Hell, you can have Jesus Christ as your quarterback and still going 9-3. I still think is a very good feat. Now, Jesus would never lose a game, but that's neither here nor there. The point of it is that I don't think people understood that how much Bama actually lost going into the season. They had 30-plus players that entered the portal. They did and were able to get some. They got Ryan Williams into the fold. But I don't think that they, for what it's worth, got the benefit of the doubt that other teams were able to be or were given. Now, I don't think that Kalen DeBoer, for what it's worth, performed at some of the levels for coaches that came into the SEC with worse things around them happening. That, let me give an example. I think Brian Kelly did a better job when he came into LSU with 39 scholarship players, right?
I got to an SEC championship game.
Right, who got to an SEC championship game. I feel like Kirby, when he took over Georgia, did a better job. Now, the record didn't indicate it in year one, but Joe, the problem is that they had so much that they had to overcome. He didn't have a starting quarterback in the SEC like he had with Jalen Milroe. There are some other coaches that did come into stops, like Joe, for example. Sam Pittman won 9 games at Arkansas in year 2. It's a much different feat, but they lost all of their games on the road. And I know that DeBoer talked about this. They lost to Oklahoma on the road. They lost to Vanderbilt on the road. The best team that they faced all year was the University of Georgia at home, and they won. Joe, the problem is that they could not sustain, and I don't think that the DeBoer culture was built in yet. And how could it be in year one when you got to go? Joe, Oklahoma is a top 10 environment in college football. It's not an easy place to go into and win. The bottom line is when you look at the University of Alabama, Joe, what was the real – did we really expect them to make a national title run? Maybe we could have expected them to make a playoff, and that's fine. Look, you shouldn't lose to Vandy. You shouldn't lose to God bless it, Oklahoma. Thank you. You shouldn't lose those games. But the bottom line remains is that maybe you got one with Georgia that you probably shouldn't have gotten. And I think that that's more or less where I look at the expectations. Joe, I came into the season last year, if you remember my prediction, I did not have them in the playoff. I had them at 9-3 because I think when you lose that many players to the draft and then that many players to the portal, I don't care who it is. Nick Saban can come back tomorrow and take over a team, and I expect him to go 9-3. But we put so much on it because of what he had to follow that, number one, it's not fair to him to have to do that, but it's also to a point where you go into Tennessee and you lose. You go into Oklahoma and you lose. You go into Tampa against Michigan and you lose. You go into Nashville against Vandy and lose. Joe, they were dominated at home. They dominated. So you get to a place where now that you go into year 2 with the culture that he's trying to build, can they overcome some of those situations will be the ultimate question.
Anyone who listens to this show knows that we've actually been particularly hard on Alabama, me especially.
You have.
And yeah, I have. And there were times last year when they beat Georgia and I talked how they proved they were the best team in the country at the time. That obviously changed very quickly and that take soured really quickly. But I've been quite hard on him, and it's interesting, like listening to and thinking about as we're reflecting on this, because again, we didn't have this conversation when the season ended. We just kind of moved on to the next things. I really do think, to pull back and look at what was accomplished in the first year in a hard conference, it was a pretty good season. And I think that there's two things that ultimately,
when the conference was down, though, by the way.
Okay. I'm not going to take that bait from you. I'm not going to take that bait
you
from
said
you.
it.
No. I'm not talking about, don't do this to me. There's two things that Alabama and Kalen DeBoer have done in the DeBoer era that I think save this situation and make us feel a lot better of the future course of this. How Kalen DeBoer has done in recruiting has been exceptional. That has blown away what anyone thought he was going to do. I would, if I looked at DeBoer coming from where he was coming from all the way across the country in the Northwest, having no real connections to the South, and to step into the recruit the way that he is, with a brand that allows him to recruit at a high level, but not faltering, I would be shocked that this is where he would be at this point. I thought he would do well, not to the degree that he is. And then, of course, what you just mentioned there, the Georgia win. If they had lost to Georgia, I think that we'd be talking about them completely differently. We would be discussing them in a completely different light if they did not beat Georgia when they did, because it would have been what would have been their most signature win last year?
LSU.
And that's a good win, but that's a team with a similar record as you. It was a really good performance by them.
Right. You both would have been 8-4, right?
The Georgia win, I think, is the biggest that saves it. And I think that why no one really feels panicked, unless you're being hyperbolic and reactionary, is that they are setting the foundation defensively, especially, to recruit this roster back close to what Nick Saban had. Maybe not exactly what Saban had, but it's at least getting close. Right.
That's a big statement. Let me say this, though. I want to throw this out there to you. We will give you, let me say we, because I don't want to speak for you. I will give you a pass on some situations, meaning you got to build in culture. You got a lot of things that you got to overcome. It's a new year. You're following Nick Saban. It's not like that's the easiest thing on planet Earth to do, right? Because it's just not. However, Joe, the reason they lost to Vandy was not necessarily personnel. The way that they lost to Oklahoma was not personnel. The way that they lost to Tennessee, I mean, you could make the argument that was maybe personnel. Maybe Tennessee was just better than them, and they did some better things down the stretch than they did. The problem with that, though, Joe, is remember the Vandy game when they refused to go outside of man coverage, and Diego Pavia and company and the coaching staff with Clark Lee pieced them alive? If we're going to give him a pass, we also got to talk about the other reality. What is that other reality? That other reality is defensively, from an X's and O's standpoint, you got flat out coached by coaching staffs that you have no business at the University of Alabama of out coaching you. Joe, they did not out-athlete. Vandy did not out-athlete Alabama. They didn't. They out-coached them.
Out-willed them.
And out-willed them, yes. So, again, then you turn to Oklahoma a season ago, and you ask, well, they ran power quarterback power how many times? That's Will, as you brought up. It's also that they did not change many things up X's and O's wise. Now, I say all that to say, obviously, I think they're going to be better this year. Obviously, I think that they're a playoff contender this year. And I don't think some of those things that happen in year one will yet happen again. However, there's a second however. Joe, there gets a point in time. Year one is year one, and you get a lot of leeway. You do some of the same shit defensively that you did last year, and it falls on your face again. That's when the excuses start going by the wayside.
They have to be. I think that's the biggest part. I have no fear about what the offense will look like. I think that it's going to be really different because Jalen Milroe's gone, but I think it's going to be a lot more level. It's going to be a lot more. It's going to be a lot more balanced because, like, think of when Michael Penix was at Washington. His first year starting, they were a little bit more balanced, and then he started to get super aggressive because he could be, and they were aggressive with the play calling. I think that Ty Simpson, which we'll get to in a second if he's the assumed starter at the current moment, I think that his style of play will be closer to Michael Penix's, and they'll be able to move the ball more methodically down the field and then take shots when necessary instead of this up and down turnover-filled play that we got from Milroe in some spurts. Defensively is exactly where I think that they need to meet that expectation. They need to return to the level of dominance that we know. And I think that a lot of opponents, we could throw Tennessee into the mix, saw blood. They saw blood. They saw Alabama showing their mortality, which is incredibly rare, something that we haven't seen in 20 plus years, where their defense was not chopping down. Even in years where Nick Saban's defenses were at their worst, they were still light years ahead of what they did last year. And statistically, they weren't horrendous, but it's exactly what you just said. They gave up plays in some of the stupidest ways possible, especially in the QB run game. They have to be stronger. They have to be better prepared. It felt like there was a lack of preparedness that they needed to bring to these matchups that it felt like they got outcoached. Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, and Tennessee all felt like they got outcoached. I think that there's a chance that they are stronger. And I've said this before, and you and I have disagreed on this. I think that their defensive line is going to be better. They need better edge play because their edge rushers are kind of depleted since Dallas Turner left 2 years ago. But their interior group of James Smith and Tim Keenan, I think, could be some serious ass kickers.
Well, look, we've talked a lot about Bama, and we talked about them a lot last year. And the narrative from their fan base was, "Oh, defense wasn't our problem." You were at 50 in rushing defense a year ago. How did it get there? Diego Pavia, Michigan, etc. Like, again, when you left outside of your confines of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, teams pushed you around. Now, here's the second thing I want to throw your way. Caden Proctor was at SEC Media Days today. I don't have a problem with Caden Proctor. In some of the losses that they've had the last 2 seasons, I've seen him get pushed around. And not just him. The running game, Joe, the physicality and tenacity that Bama is known for, they didn't do a year ago. Again, how in the world should – again – Bama fans will hear what I just said and say, "Oh, you son of a bitch." No, you're not supposed to in year 1 under head coach. Legitimately. Joe, that is the hardest thing to find. It's the hardest thing to do. The hardest thing to do is to win up front, without a doubt. But going into year 2, if some of your things, like you mentioned in the run defense, if some of the things that you mentioned, Joe, when they could not beat Tennessee and help out Jalen Milroe, and everybody knew that he was going to throw. When they played against Oklahoma, Joe, they couldn't run the football. Like, those are the 2 things that you got to do to get back where you were. You're a win away from getting back there and going 10-2 and getting to the playoff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that the O-line stuff's like a really good conversation to bring up as well. And Proctor, now the leader of this offensive line, with Booker gone, he has to be the guy. The one thing that's been like a little surprising to me, and I was talking about this with some of my scouting buddies, we nitpick little things like this. Apparently, Proctor's heavier than he was last year, which is wild to me, because the biggest talking point is if he lost weight, he would move better and he'd be more consistent.
He's not a tackle. And I told you that when he came into Bama, and I will tell you this 3 years after. He has never been a left tackle. He is a guard. How many
guards shouldn't be 370 pounds anyways? Like that's the problem here.
I'm not saying that they should be. He's always been a guard. Yeah. He would listen to me right now. He would be much better there. Now, one thing I would say that would help them is there was an excuse, or not really an excuse. There was a lot of people that put Jalen Milroe, which, listen, you can't, in the games that he lost, whether it be Oklahoma, whether it be Tennessee, whether it be Michigan, regardless of the game, he turned the ball over too much. Now, Ty Simpson, if you don't turn the ball over too much, maybe things turn for you in the way that they need to turn. Ty Simpson's got to hold on to the ball. But I would say the reason those turnovers happen too is a lot like what happened with Garrett Nussmeier a year ago. When you can't line up and run the ball, Joe, you had arguably the best guard in the country. When you're not giving him help, that's when things start to crumble. So again, I think you and I are higher on Bama in year 2 under DeBoer, but there's some context that got to come to this. And listen, here's what I finally say about Kalen DeBoer. He said we didn't meet expectations, and I got to be honest with you. So what? I'm not saying you, Joe. In the beginning of the season last year, I said they were going to 9-3. You literally met my expectations, literally. So for what it's worth, I think you're right on track for where you need to be. Yeah. For me personally.
Yeah.
So let's see if they continue will be a question. The second thing that Kalen DeBoer said that's made a lot of headlines, he said it at the podium. He said it again today with the SEC media crew. He said that if they started the season right now and they had to go in the back parking lot of the College Football Hall of Fame, Ty Simpson would be their starting quarterback. Joseph DeLeone, your thoughts on Ty Simpson potentially and what we probably believe will be the starting quarterback for the University of Alabama?
I'm maintaining the read that I had on this at the very beginning of this battle. I think that Austin Mack is just getting brought up in this, kind of similar to the Julian Say and Lincoln Kienholt situation. You want to make sure a guy that you trust sticks around so that you have a high floor.
Well, he can't go anywhere.
Well, now he can't. If he could have left at the end of the spring, if there was a clear separation.
Right.
Ty Simpson, I think, is the best fit for Ryan Grubb's offense. I think that he can do a lot of things that we saw Michael Penix do at a high level as a starter. Not saying that Ty Simpson becomes a Heisman Trophy finalist, but I think that in a very quarterback-friendly system throughout DeBoer's career, he has elevated guys that he has had the opportunity to work with as an OC when he was at Indiana, then at Fresno State as a coach, and then the head coach of Washington. He has been able to get the most out of these guys. And I think that Ty Simpson will provide a lot more balance than what Jalen Milroe had. However, I really do believe if there is any rockiness and say they lose a game in the beginning, in the middle of the year that they're not supposed to, I really think that they will turn to Keelon Russell in kind of a DJ Lagway-esque situation where it's a spark, great athlete, brilliant young man, makes some big plays, and everybody starts to just feel good after maybe feeling a little bit concerned after a silly loss.
I got to put I'm not me saying I want to push back on this. It's not necessarily how I feel of what I'm trying to ask you here.
Okay.
Do you really think he would do that after he stuck with Jalen Milroe the way that he did, though? Do you understand the question?
I understand the question you're asking me. I'm not saying that there's a high probability that this happens. I just wouldn't weigh out Keelon Russell being an option for them. And I'm more so saying that, like, if Ty Simpson didn't play well and didn't live up to expectations, I think that Keelon Russell would be the next guy out there. I'm just projecting based on the fact that this kid was incredibly highly recruited and he was super talented. My biggest reason for this, Blake, is he's been brought up in a three-way quarterback competition. If he wasn't worth anything and he wasn't worth being brought up and he hasn't been surprising them, they wouldn't be talking about him at all. Tavian Sinclair doesn't get brought up in the Ohio State quarterback battle because he's not ready. He's too green. Keelon Russell's getting brought up and odd him out.
All right. Here's what I ultimately believe now that we're 45 days out of this. I think Ty Simpson's, as you've mentioned many times, I've never really come out here and said this. I do think the style of his play is a better fit for what they want to run. If you remember, Joe, when we talked about it, Washington a lot, what did Washington do very effectively? Dump, shot. Meaning they would throw quick, take a deep shot to elite receivers. They got Penix. I think of the Oregon game, the first Oregon game that they played in 23, where it was dump off, take a shot. Then it opened up their running game, and it's what they did a lot. we both love Ryan Grubb as a play caller. And what I think here for Ty Simpson, he's a guy that I think, Joe, that quite honestly, who's been in Alabama since 2022, we haven't seen a lot of. Joe, he's got 50 passing attempts on his career. The one game that we got to see him, the entire offense and the entire team wasn't ready or worth a darn when they face off against South Florida. And I think that when we look at Ty Simpson, Joe, do we really have any remote idea of what he can be? Now, Saban clearly saw something in the kid to bring him there, and he stuck around. And listen, I don't know if he could have a situation where, like, hey, man, we don't know enough about this kid. And then you get a guy like Garrett Nussmeier who did it at LSU, who just comes out of nowhere and starts going off in the SEC championship game. I don't know if Ty Simpson is that. But, Joe, for me, I pretty much felt like today when watching Kalen DeBoer at the podium or watching him on the SEC Media Corps, it's as stamped as it can be with him. Oh, well, if we played a game today, he'd be our starter. No, he's your starter. Joe, we haven't seen enough to make a determination. You know, the last time a quarterback had 50 attempts, though, now he wasn't this highly recruited, and a lot of people thought he would be elite. A lot of people said the same thing about Bryce Young, right? What are you going to get? That same staff recruited both quarterbacks, by the way. This was a kid that was brought in by the previous staff and stuck around. I do think that Ryan Grubb is a great play caller that can get him into situations and, quite honestly, get athletes in space, which they did not do enough of a season ago. They abandoned the run too much. They didn't get Ryan Williams the ball in space enough. They weren't creative to get him the ball in space enough. You remember the Vandy game where they ran an RPO and the receivers did it was like a doubles right, and they do like this stupid little thing where they're shooting the basketball, trying to draw people off of what they were doing. That's not creative. It's dumb. Ryan Grubb ain't about that life. We've seen him call plays in an elite level, and quite honestly, I thought if he had a better athletes around him at Washington that could have held up against that Michigan defensive line, it could have been a different game. We've seen the both of them mold quarterbacks at a high level. I do think Ty Simpson's ready for this. I think there's something to be said about a kid that sticks around, but I don't think it's fair to him that you just, for a first-time starter, that you cut the leash out from under him quickly. You got to let him play, because here's the truth. Keelon Russell isn't ready either. He's not ready. And I don't care what anybody – he's not ready. Joe, I saw this kid multiple times, and listen, I think that he is going to be very special. But I think you got to roll with Ty Simpson until you know for a definitive fact that it's not going to work. And I don't think that you give up on Austin Mack, and I don't think that you give up on any three of them. But you're going out there in the way that he said it today, you're solidifying that he is your dude.
Right. I think that there's a confidence in how they feel about him. There was another quote that I wrote down here that he said that really stuck out to me. He said he's seen the ups and downs. He's got a great relationship with the team. He's a leader that way. He's really owned things, I think, on another level. He kind of gave quotes on all the quarterbacks, but his quote on Simpson stood out to me the most because he's saying things that he feels confident in him as the starter. And I need to be clear, and I know that you kind of understand where I'm coming from, but before Alabama fans yell at me for what I was insinuating, I think that Simpson will be the starter and start the whole year, and I think everything's going to go smoothly and be fine. I think at the very least, like if worst case scenario, Ty Simpson will just be, maybe not like super dynamic, but he's not going to do enough to like really get benched. I think that where I'm getting at with Keelon Russell, if he steps on the field, that is like panic's a little extreme, but if things are going really poorly, like the offense can't move the ball and they lose a game in a low scoring output in a way that they're not supposed to, and I don't think this is going to happen, but if everything goes extremely poorly in the middle of the season in one game and fans aren't satisfied, I think that is what opens the door for Keelon Russell. The one thing I disagree with you on that you said, I really don't think that Austin Mack is frankly in as much in the mix as it seems. Like, I think that he's there and he's stuck around because he knows the system. I think I'm standing by that. If they legitimately just were unsatisfied with Simpson, that it would go to Keelon Russell, because just from the fact that teams do this, when you have a 5-star quarterback and things aren't going well with the guy who's been around for a couple of years, let the freshman play. It's something that we talked about with Auburn too. Things aren't going well, put Deuce Knight out there. It'll make everyone feel a little bit better when Deuce Knight plays well, because then you're like, okay, at least you recruited a guy who's a good player for our system.
It saved Billy Napier's job, if we're being honest, and the wins.
It did.
Right. If I insinuated that Austin Mack I thought was in the fold, I didn't try to intend it that way, because I don't believe that he is. But I also don't think Keelon Russell is ready. Joe, there's no true freshman quarterback coming into this situation unless you're Tim Tebow that is ready. I mean, you got to.
Did anyone think Lagway was ready?
Well, Joe, can I just be real with you? I'm going to say something, and it's going to come off the wrong way, but it's the truth.
Okay.
There were some very, very highly impressive throws that DJ Lagway made. There was also some very massive freshman moments that he made too. He was not ready. Joe, the second half of the Ole Miss game, if Jackson Dart does not turn the ball over 3 times, they're losing that football game. Secondly, if Jaden Ball does not go off in the second half versus LSU, he loses them the ball game because he's missing open wide receivers. I'm telling you what I know. I promise you. So for me, that is being not ready. That, to me, when you're not in there enough and you haven't been in a system long enough to know, no one is criticizing, and I'm not criticizing Lagway on that. I'm not saying a kid's not ready is not criticism.
I know it's not.
It is saying that, listen, he was better and did better things than Graham Mertz did, meaning DJ Lagway. I think that Ty Simpson, what I felt today in reference to Kalen DeBoer and listening to him, was that he finally felt that he was ready. Now, I do think Jalen Milroe a season ago kind of kept the roster together, and they didn't want to pull the plug out of that because they're trying to build a culture, and they knew that they could go 9-3 in doing it. I agree that in reference to actual play, the leash will be shorter, but I get what you're trying to say. I don't want to say Austin Mack's in the fold. I think it was an Austin Grubb like satisfaction because he brought him in at Washington, if we're being honest. So look, we'll see.
Whoa, wait. Mack came. Well, actually, I guess Mack came when Grubb was still technically there. I don't agree with you with the Lagway thing, though. I think that he might not have been ready, but he played incredibly well for a true freshman quarterback, and they would not have won. Well, the one thing that I will say, and I'm not trying to do the I told you so, but like every week you and I argued if DJ Lagway should start, and them starting him bought Billy Napier time, and they finished the season really strong.
Fair. He also he had some situations versus Tennessee where he threw the interception that led to overtime. Joe, he threw a pick six.
He was a true freshman. But the thing is, if you put out a guy who's really gifted and he makes mistakes, we can
Graham Mertz led a 98-yard drive for a touchdown for them to go to overtime. There was a difference in games that we saw when Graham Mertz wasn't hurt.
Okay, but my point is that when you have a true freshman out there, and that true freshman makes a mistake, but he has a really promising big play, you can shrug your shoulders and say, like, oh, he's just a true freshman.
I get what you're trying to say there, but here's the problem with that. Florida kept getting their shit kicked in, and they can do that because they were going to lose regardless. At Alabama, that's not the overall situation. Joe, if they're 6-4, 10 games into this, yes, fine. But that's not the expectation of where they want to be. It's not remotely close. The situations at Florida and Alabama are vastly different.
Okay, fair. It's fair. I'll agree to that part.
Listen, I know y'all love Lagway, and I do too. That Tennessee pick was bad, and it should be bad.
One of his first games.
It should be bad. Brother, I was in a situation where Garrett Nussmeier threw 2 picks against Southern. Some of y'all believe he's going to win the Heisman, and he very well could. Arch Manning threw 2 picks against ULM. He very well could win the Heisman. Again, doesn't mean that you're ready.
Okay. All right.
You can't argue with me on my birthday.
I know. I'm that's
Happy
what I'm
25th birthday, Blake, says Cody in the super chat. Have a good one, bro. Any thoughts on Deion saying the NCAA needs a salary cap? They do have a salary cap.
Technically they do, technically they don't, but like I think that it's easy to say that they need a salary cap, and I don't think that there's any way to enforce. We're trying to enforce things right now. Trying to enforce a salary cap would be a mess.
I thought Kirby, which we'll get to Kirby in just a minute. Kirby on XM radio said, "How can you have a salary cap when the House settlement case said that what the TV revenue will exceed in the next 3 years?"
Yeah. Right.
I mean, they can't have one until the federal government literally mandates it after the third year. Yeah. Right? I mean, am I wrong? I mean, Kirby, I thought that was the best answer. So, Joe, I don't mean to say this to Deion. I know he's been under a lot of health issues. I don't know if Deion knows what he's talking about in that. Like, how do I?
Yeah, I don't agree. I don't agree with his take either.
Right. I don't either. But thank you for the birthday money. Yeah. Marshall with a $5 super chat says, to be fair to DeBoer, he does better with pocket passers, which makes Milroe not his style of quarterback for his system.
Yeah, I guess I agree with that because, well, Penix before he got hurt
Penix couldn't run. I mean, didn't Penix run like a 4.6 at the 4.6 40?
He just wasn't as like shifty as Milroe was. Before he messed up his knees, he was pretty mobile. Not Milroe mobile, but like he was pretty mobile. Jake Haener, not mobile. He's a little, I don't know if I'd like really classify him as a pocket passer though.
I will say this. If you remember Washington, before DeBoer left Washington, who was the quarterback they got in the portal after post Penix? You remember who it was?
Was it talking about Will Rogers?
When they Will freaking Rogers. I do think
that was DeBoer.
I do think that they do want, to Marshall's point, they want somebody that wants to sit in the pocket a little bit more. So I do agree with his point. Joe, last thing here on the University of Alabama. Boy, Deontae Lawson came out swinging today, did he not? Well, really, he came out defending his team. As last week or 2 weeks ago, Tommy Castellanos to On3 basically had some very undesirable comments to the University of Alabama. And Deontae Lawson came out today and said, with all due disrespect, all the disrespect, will be addressed accordingly. Do you like the way that Deontae Lawson addressed the comments of Thomas Castellanos?
So I was listening to this morning when the interview was live, so I got to hear the way that he was answering this, and I think Lawson did a really good job of just kind of like not stirring it up, but still very confidently and then dismissively responding to it. We talked a lot on last show on Monday about the Pavia stuff and creating bulletin board material. When Castellanos came out and called his shot against Alabama, we talked about bulletin board material. And there were plenty of people who tried to chime in and tell us to stop taking it so seriously. We don't know what we're talking about. Those people haven't played a damn down of football in their lives. They don't understand how you respond when there are public statements like this. Teams get pissed off. Real good football teams get pissed off. Again, if you've been in a locker room, you know what these things are like. Lawson, in this situation, could not have answered this better. I love this comment by him because he's not getting emotional. He's not getting reactionary. He's not saying anything crazy. He's not saying we're going to smoke Florida State. That didn't come out of his mouth. He just said that we will address it accordingly. That is a leader right there, and that also tells me they're pissed off. I'm telling you right now, they're going to be pissed off at Vandy too if that's how they're talking about Florida State.
Remember 2 weeks ago when we talked about giving teams unwanted bulletin board material?
Mm-hmm.
Castellanos is in trouble. He's in trouble. You listen, you can, I don't want to say take jabs at a team. You could have ended the comment. And listen, I think as Pete Nakos' career goes on, he won't take every single soundbite that you get from a juiced up player. Joe, you know better than most. There are things on this little thing right here from players that we have NIL deals with that will never see the light of day, ever. You got to protect kids too. I think that there's a level of the Castellanos comment should have not been out there. That's number one. Number two, I also believe that if the comment would have ended at specifically of him saying, I'm really excited to play Alabama. If you remember the second sentence, he said, Alabama has been the standard of college football. Why wouldn't I want to play the University of Alabama? Insinuating that competitors always want to play the best, because of course they do. Of course they do. It's the last comment that got him in trouble. Yeah. And I think that it is not necessarily, it is your and my job to make content, but sometimes there's got to be protection. This is, if these kids weren't fired up at Alabama before, they sure as hell are going to be up now. And listen, I love that him saying that all disrespect is going to be addressed at a certain time. That's all he needs to say. Yeah. All he needs to say. We're going to take it to your ass, and you better be ready. A team that went 2-10 has no business talking shit. That's the bottom line. And it goes back to we're talking about SEC Media Days in Alabama. I got to be honest with you. That falls on the culture of Mike Norvell too. Brother, you went 2-10. Y'all, brother, you're going to be battling to get to 6-6 if you ain't careful. You're on borderline on getting your ass fired, and you're starting quarterbacks taking jabs on, let's call it what it is, on the team Nick Saban or post-Nick Saban is the face of college football. They are. I mean, they've won more national championships than anybody. What are you doing? I love the Deontae Lawson bit, but the thing that got me really kind of like, oh, shit, was in his comment before. He says, with all the disrespect shown to us, he goes, oh, well, it certainly ignited a fire under us.
Yes, it definitely ignites us a little bit, is what he said, which is, he did a really good job of like kind of like weaving, like, we're paying attention to this, but it's not everything that we're focused on. We're not letting us distract us with like blind fury that we're just charging downhill. We're approaching this accordingly. Honestly, and people can tell me I'm reading into this too much, Blake, but I think that this really speaks to the culture that Kalen DeBoer has. It's hard to get a glimpse into what the leaders of a program are saying and doing, and knowing how the locker room is responding to what the coaches are trying to instill on their players. We saw a team that went 2-10 last year. You got a guy coming into the transfer portal doing an interview with Pete Nakos, talking all this crazy stuff, saying how they're going to beat Alabama. That means that you do not have the same page. You are not on the same page with the most important players on your roster, your expected starting quarterback. In the Alabama situation here, DeBoer, the whole defensive staff, the offensive staff, they're on the same page, knowing that, like, hey, they're going to ask you about this. You can respond, but be a leader. Go out there and say, like, hey, look, we're paying attention to this, but it's not taken away from our preparation. We're not talking. This isn't talking for us. We're out there to play ball, but we're going to handle it.
Joe, I got to be real with you. Deontae Lawson, 6'2", 235 pounds, and the way that he runs, I don't really think that that's the man that I want to talk shit to.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Dude, I can't wait till ACC Media Days, by the way. I can't. I think they're next week. Let me double check that.
If I'm not mistaken, the Big Ten and the ACC are next week. So we'll see, man. It's going to be very, very interesting. But speaking of other media days, boy, did the Big Ten fire back today at the comments that Kirby Smart made yesterday on SiriusXM Radio. Kirby Smart, Joe, yesterday was asked in reference to his thoughts on the future of the college football playoff. Kirby Smart said that the best teams should be in the playoff. He asked the host of the radio show, he asked them that, listen, Indiana, who are you picking right now out of the teams last year? Indiana or the three SEC teams that were left out of the field? Kirby Smart also said that there should be an emphasis on how and who is selected into the college football playoff. And he also talked about the loss column. He's saying we only focus on losses and we don't focus on the schedule, and we don't focus on the strength of schedule or strength of record. Who are you taking? Indiana, or any of those three teams. Kirby did state in the last comment of the hit, I don't care if 10 Big Ten teams make the playoff next year if all 10 of those teams have proven that they belong to be there. We need to get the best teams in regardless of conference. Joe, your thoughts on Kirby Smart's comments about the college football playoff?
Yeah, I don't think that it's none of it's surprising to me, and it's expected to this point that Kirby is going to be aligned with how the SEC and all the SEC coaches have spoken to this point where they feel that the selection process is flawed. He didn't even really weigh in on the new model and the 16-team model. He just spoke very.
Hold on, pause. He did. If you go back to the interview, it's the first question that he's asked. He says, I don't care if the model is 5 + 11 or an AQ model. We want the best teams in.
Whoa, so that's what I'm saying. So the quote that I had in front of me was that where he just wants to focus on improving the selection process, which
yes,
good on him. I think that is something that we've bypassed in this whole conversation. Why have we not spoken more loudly about making the selection process deeper? We've talked about on this show where we think that there should be an algorithm, there should be a metric that should have the same amount of weight as the selection committee. You should have a selection committee that makes the decisions. You should have an algorithm that's making the decisions, and that ultimately puts together your final field. I think that what he emphasized, how the amount of losses that you have should not get you into the playoff, that I have agreed with. It needs to be how you are winning football games. I didn't like him using Indiana as an example, and I'm going to explain this in a second. I think that where it became incredibly flawed and why it had so many issues was SMU getting in the way that they did, Clemson getting in the way that they did. The fact that we landed in this situation where SMU got in because of the fact that they had a good regular season record. They had one loss to BYU, no signature wins, and then they could not get knocked out for losing in their conference championship game. I would rather target SMU, who got embarrassed in their game against Penn State. I think at the very least, and I know that this is opening a can of worms, at least Indiana opened a can of whoop ass on every single team that they played on their very weak schedule. SMU didn't do that. SMU was the one team that I kept bringing up that I had problems with for getting into that playoff field. We need to continue to emphasize the wins that you have, and if you can't help the fact that you've got a weak schedule, you better at least beat the shit out of every team that you're playing.
So finally, you've come around to that the Big 12 and ACC, for what it's worth, does not deserve, based off of the schedules. I mean, well, you're going to have to explain to me more then, because you're basically saying what I have been saying on this show for a long time. You are right. Joe, brother, there were national media members who we respect and have had on this show who went out there at the end of the season saying SMU should not be penalized for losing to Clemson. South Carolina should not be penalized for beating Clemson because they're in another conference. It has been the crux of my argument the entire time. I don't give two flying shits what your record is. I could care less. What does your schedule tell me? Joe, listen. We got to get to a point where everybody is trying to paint this for us that this is a Big Ten versus SEC argument. It shouldn't be. I want everybody to be included too. I want the best teams in, regardless of what conference they come from. It doesn't matter what conference they come from. Joe, 2 years ago when Texas got in the playoff in the Final Four, what did they do? They won the Big 12, but what else did they do? They went on the road to the University of Alabama and won. They did it. They proved that they could go in there and win. My point in this is, and I'm going to fire back, bullshit on Indiana, because Indiana got manhandled by Ohio State and they beat one team above 500. One team went above 500 in Michigan that they beat. One. If I'm the head coach of a team, of even it being in the Big Ten or the SEC, I don't give a shit. You beat one team above 500. And you know what else? If I'm a coach in the SEC, with Wake Forest going away from a game with a home and home, with Ole Miss, with Indiana canceling games, with Nebraska canceling games, Joe, why in the world would I ever not want it to be about strength of schedule and strength of record? Now, if you remember 2.5 months or a month and a half ago, I know that you don't like Brian Kelly, but he said something that is 1,000% true.
And I agreed with this.
The RPI level system, if they could put it together and test it and see if it works, that is how college baseball has gotten a lot of this shit right. For all that college baseball has gotten wrong, the RPI has gotten a lot of shit right. Example, Joe, 4 years ago, the last team in the field was Ole Miss. They were 10th in the SEC. 10th. They won a national title. But the problem is that they faced off against so many teams that were so good in their conference, it looked like, oh, what the shit is going on? That Ole Miss isn't good. No, their teams were really good. They had the toughest schedule in the SEC. Joe, the best teams have got to start getting in the playoff, regardless of what goes down. I don't think that anybody – Joe, how can the Big Ten make an argument when you have Indiana canceling Virginia and going up against Kennesaw State? Now, you could say Virginia is not a good P4 program, and I agree.
Not.
Kennesaw State won 3 games last year.
You're replacing a win with a win.
You're replacing.
They didn't cancel Alabama to schedule Kennesaw State.
There are better athletes at Virginia that will test you more than Kennesaw State.
Barely.
So
UVA is a bad football program.
Regardless, you have a team in one of the G5 programs that are barely getting wins, and you're canceling Power 4 games.
Okay. I need to respond to something else that you said a second ago.
Okay.
We can't overemphasize strength of schedule.
We have
to wait. We have to meet in the middle on evaluating teams. It is not as simple as just strength of schedule, because then Florida would have been a playoff team last year. Florida would have gotten into the playoff if it was purely based on, do you play close with all the really tough teams on your schedule as long as you're losing those games by a touchdown? Like we have to have a little bit of reason here. Just because a team has a weak schedule, and Indiana was in the situation where they played a bunch of crap teams, just because they were in that spot, they were able to make up for it by dominating, blowing out every single team on their schedule. That to me at least means something that at least should come into the conversation. Indiana didn't deserve to get booted out of the playoff. They at least should have been one of the last teams in. That is where I will stand on that. We can't just sit here and go, did you play a hard schedule? Okay, fine. Whatever your record is, we don't care. You're getting in. That's what it becomes. And Joe, I don't know off the top of my head. Wait, what year did they cancel? Actually, you could go ahead and what you're going to say, because I want to look up and see what year they canceled that UVA game and see what their schedule is like.
2027, I think. I could be wrong. I have no idea, but I think it might be 2027. I don't remember. Can I read something off for you very quickly on the playoff teams from a year ago? Oregon's strength of schedule was 52nd. They won the Big Ten. Georgia's first. Ohio State's strength of schedule, 25th. They went 10-2. Tennessee's 21. Evenly matched teams. They go to Ohio State. They lose. Okay? Fair. Here's where I start having a problem with this. Indiana. Brother, I mean, you're getting in the 80s in this.
Wait. Hold on.
Hold on one second. Indiana, strength of schedule, 77th. You want to go to strength of record? 112.
By this logic, Notre Dame shouldn't have gone in, and they played Ohio State.
No, that's not true. I'm glad you brought up Notre Dame. Notre Dame, top 25 wins, 2. Indiana, 0. Like you literally, Notre Dame, fine. I get what you're trying to say there. They actually went on the road and tested themselves and got 2 top 25 wins when Indiana's got 0, Joe. 0. I mean, I can bring it. Well, let me ask you this very quickly. Can I bring this on screen without us getting copyright infringed?
What do you bring it on screen?
It's just a graphic. Let's not do it. Let's not.
Yeah.
I mean,
with the trouble that we've had over the last couple of days. Yeah, let's avoid it.
Okay, that's fair. Texas A&M. Okay, remember when Notre Dame played them? Strength of schedule 23rd. When I look at the Big Ten teams and the ACC teams, one weighs massively different. Now, I will concede on one thing that you said. The one thing, the strength of schedule cannot be everything. But at the same time, Oregon had 9 conference games. Let's go down. SMU had 9 conference games. Indiana had 9 conference games. Clemson had 9 conference games. Joe, outside of Ohio State, none of them get inside the top 30 of strength of schedule. None of them. By the way, Ohio State plays Texas in the beginning of the season. They will test themselves. I'm starting to get to a point where I don't know how you can disagree with Kirby on this. The ACC's
I don't disagree with Kirby on this.
The toughest strength of schedule comes from Miami at 50, or Clemson, at 57th. And by the way, they played Georgia in week 1.
I don't disagree with Kirby on this, and it aligns with what I've brought up before, that there should be a mandate that you should have to play a team in every conference.
You got to, man.
And I don't care if the SEC wants to seem like their schedule is too hard to accomplish scheduling that. I think that it would remove more doubt, and it would make the debates, I think, less vicious.
Last thing I'll read off to you. I'll send this to anybody for verification if you want it. South Carolina's strength of schedule at 9-3, 12th. Ole Miss, 27th. Alabama, 11th. Think about Alabama for just a second. We talked about them a lot this week. Alabama's top 25 wins, 4. Losses, 1. So we weigh the losses so much. Joe, think about this. Alabama had more top 24 wins than SMU, Indiana, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Clemson combined.
Okay, but the problem
that's playoff teams, Joe.
Yeah, but we're forgetting though that the losses that South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Alabama suffered were bad losses, and they all lost to each other. So that made that dynamic very complicated.
I don't think it should when you're 4-1 against top 25 opponents too.
I do think we have to talk about losses in the conversation, because if you lose to a bad team and you have more than one loss, then it's going to seriously tank your resume. Because which version of you are going to show up?
With all due respect, beating South Carolina and Georgia is more of a resume than, with all due respect, those 5 teams that I read off. They did something that Clemson, Notre Dame, SMU, and Arizona State did not do.
Well, Arizona State got the auto bid, so why are we suddenly canceling them because of their auto bid?
I'm canceling them because if you're going to say the same thing about SMU, I can make the same argument for a 2-loss Arizona State team and their 2 losses that they had. I don't think the losses that Arizona State had is as worse as losing Oklahoma on the road. Sorry, I don't. Maybe the way that they lost made it look worse than what it was, but it's not worse than losing one of the games that they did earlier in the season.
I'm afraid to keep arguing this because we're just completely rehashing an argument that we've had 10 times. But no, I look,
Kirby can't be wrong. He can't be wrong. And then you look at some of these things that some of these other teams did.
I know, but wait, I never said that he was wrong.
I know.
I never said that he was wrong.
But if you're going to talk about resume, Ohio State, the national champion, was 2-2 going into the playoff against top 25 opponents.
Are you saying that that's good or bad for the?
No, I'm saying that it was a tough-ass schedule. It was the toughest schedule in the Big Ten, and 2 of the 4 teams that you played, you lost to.
The Big Ten can't help that half of the teams don't try. They can't.
And the SEC can't help that a lot of teams give a fuck.
I partially reject that. I do think that some of the bad teams in the conference have been overinflated on how good they are. I mean, like I've said that before a million times.
No,
so
I went through this with you before. If we're going record on record, Nebraska was the same relevance in where they ended than LSU was a year ago, and I'm promising you, they're going to whip that ass. Nebraska wasn't worth a fuck.
All right. We will argue for another hour. So
I'm right here. My steak's not going to be ready for another 5 minutes.
Go celebrate your birthday. Jeez.
All right. I do love you, though.
Thank you, Blake. I love you too. Happy birthday.
Thanks. We'll see y'all soon. Peace.